Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this month's Lunch and Learn. What we are going to be looking at through this session is a continuation from last month's Lunch and Learn session, where we were looking at kind of some of the more basic functionality around the AP processing side of the system. We're going to recover some of those again, just for those who weren't able to join last time, and then I'll just show you some other additional functionalities as well. So if I can get my slides to work, there we go. So we are going to be going through a more advanced processing toolkit throughout this session. There'll be the live demo that I'll be taking you through. We'll then have a quick look at the Compleat ecosystem, and then there'll be an opportunity for questions and hopefully some answers. Just a note on that one, as we're going through the session, if you do have any questions, it's this Q&A box here. Hopefully that's coming through on your screen okay, but that Q&A, if you select that one and then pop your questions in, and we'll try and get through as many of them as we can at the end of the session. So this is me. I'm a software implementation consultant here at iCompleat, been here for about 6.5 years now, I think. Never looked back since joining. Just some housekeeping throughout the session. If we could just make sure all the microphones are switched off, obviously apart from mine. Just helps with minimizing any interruptions. As I said, any questions, if you just drop them in the Q&A box. And we are recording today's session as well, and obviously we'll be you'll be receiving a copy of the link via email afterwards. So what we are going to look at, we've got quite a big list. I won't spend as long on them as I did last time, you'll be pleased to hear. So we're going to have a look at things including supplier defaults, quick actions, header only extraction, transferring, so that's be transferring between layouts and between companies, adding notes and attachments to transactions, adding and deleting lines, matching of an invoice to an order, and then we'll have a quick look at layouts and custom fields as well, and some of the additional functionality we have around that. The benefits of obviously deploying all or some of these is that you're really laying the foundation for better clarity in the system. You're keeping everything in one place. It means that there's one central area where people can go to recall all the information. If you are processing an invoice and you had, let's say, some supporting documentation, maybe it's some scanned copies of pictures of a repair that a service person did, or it's quotations, what have you, you can add those to the transaction. So you're keeping everything together and all in one place. And that also in turn leads on to reporting as well, better reporting by analyzing the transactions in a certain way, by getting them to auto process, etc. It just keeps everything turning and everything moving in the right direction. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move on to the demonstration for the actual session. And if I bring iCompleat over, then, oops, no, wrong one. Let me grab iCompleat. Let's find that one. There we go, that's better. Let's get iCompleat over. So what we are going to do then is, obviously in the invoices module, the invoices side of things, we are going to be, first of all, I'll show you the supplier mapping and defaults within the system. So obviously I've got some transactions in the system here. This particular invoice, you can see here that every other invoice has a number followed by the supplier name. I don't have a supplier number here. So that's kind of telling me that there might be something different about this particular invoice. And if I click into there, you can see up at the top, it's telling me that it requires a validation review. The supplier requires mapping. Now, what I need to do is map this invoice to the supplier. And the reason behind that is because in our capture system, we will have a copy of, for example, Technodrive Computers Limited, but in your finance system, it may just be Technodrive Computers. And so what we have to do is map those together. I can click directly on this red banner. So anywhere you see a red banner on a transaction page, clicking onto it will take you directly to that particular area that needs to be addressed. And you can see here it's now highlighting in red, telling me please select correct supplier. If I map this supplier, it's a very simple process. All I need to do is just look up the supplier. And the moment I do that, it's giving me the supply defaults button. And what I can do, click on apply defaults, and I can tell the system the next time I receive an invoice from this particular supplier, this is the account code to use, this is the tax code to use, and any other areas that have been put onto the layout that need to be completed. I can preset those in advance. I can also tell it which workflow to submit to as well. And this is particularly important if we want to get the automatic submission of transactions working. We can tell the system, populate all of the data that you require, and then send it to this particular workflow. If we had the situation whereby when the invoice comes in, it might be multiple account codes, and we have to gauge or have to review each line individually once the invoice comes in, what we can do is we can go through and set everything else as expected, or as it should be, but just simply leave the account code blank. And what we'll find the next time the invoice comes in, everything else will be set and ready to go. It will just be expecting the account code to be set. So it's just a time saver in that regard. If we were to go ahead and set everything, once we click on save, it's going to have a look and see if there are any other unprocessed invoices or transactions for a particular supplier, and it will go and apply those as well. And now what we'll find, if I go through each of the lines, you can see that it's coded up the account code in the area for me automatically. I'll show you at the end of the demo where we can go and have a look at all of the supply defaults as a whole. You'll notice as I'm clicking through the lines here, they're all turning grey because the system now has everything that it requires. It's just one area on the header that needs to be populated. I think that's just the supply. If I click save, that should then, there we go. It's taking me back to the summary view. I have no red banner. Everything is good to go. And it knows that it's going to be submitted to that invoices route. So that's the mapping and the defaults. The final piece in the puzzle with the mapping is if we submit it, it's going to ask, would you like all future invoices received from the supplier to be automatically linked to the supplier in the finance system? Saying yes to this will permanently link that those two records together and ensure that every time the next invoice comes in, it picks up who the supplier is and who the defaults are. So if you're finding that you have set supplier defaults and it's not applying them and still keeps asking who the supplier is, it might be because you haven't yet submitted an invoice and said yes to this message. Again, at the end of this, what I'll do is I'll show you where we can break that link if you've accidentally mapped to the wrong supplier. I'm just going to cancel out there because I want that invoice to stay in place for later. So what we are also going to look at is the quick actions. So if I go into this invoice here, you'll see that I've got multiple lines of this invoice. And what I can do, instead of having to go through each one individually, I can either go through the grid like so, or I can go to the edit screen and I can click through the lines and code it like so. But instead of having to do each one individually, I can come up to here and use this quick actions. And if I select quick actions, it will give me the areas that are requiring, or rather need to have a code in place before it can be submitted. Looks like the tax code's being taken care of, that's fine. But account code we are missing and area code we're missing. And what we can do is use our quick actions to set the account code and then choose either all or individually the lines that we want to update. And then we can come up to here and choose the account code, click apply, and that is going to apply the account code automatically. And I can then do the same with the area code as well. Apply there, and you can see it's coded everything up for me. So that's the quick actions that that quite a few customers find very useful to speed up the processing again. Obviously, don't forget that the supplier defaults can automatically set the codes for you. So you don't have to go through that exercise at all. However, if you haven't set the defaults, this would just be a quick way to code them up. Now, another tool I can show you is, again, with this invoice, it may be that the supplier has sent this invoice through and it's multiple lines, and we don't actually want to see multiple lines being posted across into our finance platform for whatever reason. We just really need the one line to go across. So what we can do is we can come down to actions, and then there's an option here for header level extraction. If I select header level extraction, it's telling me, warning me that all lines and coding will be lost. So what that will do is it's going to concatenate all of these lines down into one and just leave me with the one line that needs to be coded. So if I say yes to that, you can see it has then shrunk everything down to one total line. All I need to do is give it an item code and description and populate the account code, populate the area, and then we are then done. It's then going to send that one line across into the finance system. So again, that was just from actions and then to the header level extraction, which obviously isn't there anymore because I've already run it. That's on an invoice by invoice basis. Now we can set it so that it will happen automatically on a supplier level. So we could have it, for example, that the BT or the Vodafone bills will automatically shrink down to just header level extraction. It will just extract the one line in there, and I'll again show you that when we're looking at the final tools, etc., at the end of the session. Obviously, we've got the existing tools that we had a look at last time. So we've got things like the notes. So I can add any notes about why it is perhaps on hold or what we're waiting for. So anything just to remind ourselves, but also to help our colleagues as well. If we're at the office and they see the invoice sitting in their process tray, they can have a look at the notes. So if I add just a selection of notes in there, I can add an icon. Let's go for an egg timer, green egg timer, select add note, and you can see it's then date, timing, and stamp with the user, what the note is. We can then add any more like so, and it will just keep adding those in, again with date, time, and stamp. Users who want to look at the notes can obviously come into the transaction, go to actions, call up notes, and there they are. Alternatively, from the grid view, there is the notes section available here. So you can see this is my, or rather these are my notes that I've added to that particular invoice we were just looking at, and there's one I was adding I think last session. You can see it carries the icon, and clicking on there, it takes us to those notes, and again we can add more if we want to. We can also add attachments to a transaction, and this is particularly good if it is, for example, as I was saying before, we need to add a copy of the quotation, or we need to add proof of works, or whatever documentation we want to add. It's just a simple case of select files, choose the file that you want to bring in, analyze it for what the actual attachment type is, and then click on the upload, and that will attach that to it. So again, it's keeping everything all together. and in one place. The other tool I can show you is if we have a situation like this where it has just produced the one line, but actually we need to see that line split over, let's say, 2 cost centers. What I can do is I can add an additional line. As long as the final total balances, everything is all fine, but we can add our additional line. If I go to edit, and then up at the top here, you can see this is where we've got the header and line number 1. Line number 1, because I didn't save it, just needs to have that information pop back in. So if you are header level extracting, just save it, just so it so you don't have to key it in again. I'm just going to add the code in here and add area. Click save. That's got everything I need. I'm now going to split that out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this plus here, and I'm going to give it the item code. Incidentally, the item code field can be removed if you are finding that it's not actually being used. I'll point that out when we're looking at layouts in a few moments. Let's do stationery for West, and what I can do is basically build in my line like so and code it up. But I've now got my additional line in here. Well, what did I say? West. There we are. Now it's going to throw out to say that it doesn't balance, but as long as I then go back and adjust this one just to make sure that it does balance, then everything is fine. You can see I've now got my 2 lines in there. Again, it's balancing back to how it should originally, but that's how I can add a line to an invoice. On the reverse, if we wanted to, we could go in and we could delete the line, but you've also got a field here for, or rather a button here to copy the line as well. So just because the invoice hasn't produced or hasn't given you the exact breakout that you want doesn't mean that you are stuck with that. You can work around it and you can add or remove lines either individually or by using the header level extraction. So I'm going to just put that back to how it was originally and going to save. And again, as long as it balances, then the system will be happy. Now, what I'm going to show you next is just a recap on the matching. Oops, postpone that. Just a recap on the matching side of things. So this invoice has come in and the suppliers put the purchase order reference on there. So looking at that, I can see that's not quite the right reference number. It's actually missing some digits. So not quite top marks, but at least they tried. What I can do is if I go back to grid, I can use this little icon here, which will allow me to choose the Excel icon just by hovering over the line and clicking on it, and it brings me to this section here. So what I can do here is I can perform matching or find a PO. Now, if I perform matching, it's going to tell me that it's updated it to no PO match because it's been looking for a PO with that reference. I know that's not the right reference, it's too small. It's got no PO match. So what I can do, come back to here and I can manually find a PO. And there's my purchase order. If I just move that column along, yeah, there's the correct number. I'll just have a look, make sure it is correct. Yep, it was for stationery. Good. And if I select it, and then down at the bottom right-hand corner, click on match. What that's going to do is that is going to update the purchase order number for me automatically, and it's going to set the status to matched. If I click on the grid again, you can see it's now showing how it's been matched and if there's any outstanding balance. And I can, if I've matched it to the wrong order, for example, I can undo match, put in the reason, click OK, and it will revert everything back to how it originally was. Oops, wrong invoice. Yep. So you can see it's reverted that back and everything has stayed accordingly. The beauty of matching in this way, if the system hasn't done it automatically, but the beauty of the matching overall, I suppose, is that the invoice can inherit the coding from the original order. So whereas we were looking at things like the quick actions and we were looking at going through and adding all of the coding, etc., if we can get the situation where it's a match, an exact match, then the invoice can just automatically inherit all the coding. And again, this would help in conjunction with our supplier defaults to be able to get the scenarios where we can have an invoice come in. The system knows who the supplier is. The system knows what the coding should be if it's not already being inherited from the purchase order, and it can automatically submit it to the workflow. So theoretically, AP operators would never see it sitting in the unprocessed tray for them to get involved in. It would just go straight out to the approvers. So we're going to move on to a slightly more advanced area now. So we're going to talk about the analysis of an invoice. And so a question that sometimes comes up is it possible to add additional analysis to an invoice? So let's say, for example, that we are cashing from your finance platform, and in there you've already got area, you've got account code, you've got tax code, but let's say you wanted project code, and it's not a field that you currently have in your finance platform, but it would be handy if you could have something noted on the transaction that will denote what the project is. And then what would be even better is if you could then have your workflows being driven. If it's this project, go to that person. If it's that project, go to this person. Obviously, next time, next Lunch and Learn, we're going to be looking at the workflows. But what I'll do here is just show you how we can add a field to the layout. So we're kind of going back a little bit to a previous Lunch and Learn where we were talking about custom fields. The first thing we would need to do is obviously go and create this custom field. So any administrators of the system will have access to this configuration tile. If I go into configuration, I can then go to custom fields, and it's in here. I've already got one. I can add a project code. So if I have a look at this particular project code, this is literally just allowing me to enter simple text up to a maximum of 10 characters in length. What may be better is if I deactivated that one, maybe create a new one, and we'll call this project. And instead of allowing users to just type information in, because obviously sometimes they may key something in incorrectly, I'm going to choose predefined, and I'm going to tell the system that it's optional. I'll leave that off actually. And I'm going to add in my project codes. So you can either type them in manually, or you can upload them from a spreadsheet and just got a set of instructions here. If you use a spreadsheet, codes must be column A, names in column B, so column A, column B, and then you can upload them. But I'll just pop a couple in here, just so we've got some data. And again, by putting them in a predefined list, we've got no possibilities of anybody keying anything in incorrectly. Click on save. So that's my field created. And what I then need to do is add it to the layout itself. So if I come to layouts, again, this is all under the admin functionality. Select the invoices layout, go to my field configuration. I'm looking for project. I can put that either on a header or a line. Let's pop it on a header level. Incidentally, line items, when I was saying if you aren't using the item code, this is where you can deactivate that. So that was in the configuration layouts. On the field configuration tab down at the bottom, we've got a field here where we can just change it to description. If I save layout, now what we'll find, if we go back to the invoice, back to the this one we were playing with, we can see that we've now no longer got an item code field, and up here I have a project code field. If I go to edit, I can scroll down, and there's my 2 project codes there. So immediately that will be available through reporting that we do, but what we can also do is then utilize that project in our workflows. So as I said, anything that's analyzed as project number 1 can go to this person, anything in project number 2 can go to that person. Obviously that's going to be in next month's session, so watch out for the invite for that one. Now just to finish up, talked quite a bit about different things that different areas that I was going to show you at the end, and this is where I can show you. So we have from the home screen, we have this option here for suppliers, and what we can do in here is from this first tab that is populated, it will show us the supplier defaults. And now what we can do is we can go straight to the supplier defaults from this screen. So if we've been in, and whilst we've been processing the invoices and we've been setting supplier defaults, we can come in here and review them. So you can see that the TechnoDrive supplier, these are the supplier defaults that I set, and in fact project is blank because that's a new field that I've just added. So what we can do from here is we can go through if we wanted to and set them in advance, or alternatively we can export them to Excel and have it show us a report of all of those supplier defaults that have already been set, so we can then go through and just update, make sure that everything is correct. So if I just open up Excel, I can just show you how that looks. Any second now. But whilst there we go, so it shows you all of the supplier defaults that we have set, so you can see that I haven't got any apart from my TechnoDrive supplier, like so. We can use that to review it, go and amend any if we need to. What we've also got is up at the top here, we've got a supplier configuration tab. So this is quite handy from a very high top level, controlling how the transactions are behaving and the things that will happen to them as they come into the system. First one is receipting. So for those customers who are using receipting, this is where you can select which supplier or which supplier's invoices are to be receipted and are not to be receipted. Simple case of going through, and we can enable or disable. Sitting above this, we do have the company level, which will either have it as a default or a default on or off, but this is just individual suppliers that we can come through and choose which ones should or shouldn't be receipted. From the drop down, we've got the option here for extract, invoice header and lines. So when I was going through showing you the process for an individual invoice, this is where we can set it at a supplier level. Now, the key thing to remember with this is, as it says in red, you must have received an invoice from the supplier in order to be able to actually set these defaults. In addition, it must have been submitted as well. So those supplier defaults being saved, and that's obviously done through the submission. We can tick and then tell it that we want to disable, and that would tell the system that every time an invoice from Crown Venue Catering comes in, regardless of how many lines, I just want to see the one line as a total. So that's how to set extract header lines at supplier level. We've then got unmap supplier. So this one here is if we have mapped a supplier and we think, oops, didn't want to do that, you can come in and you can disable. Again, have to have received it and submitted it to the workflow for it to actually show up in here. And what this will do, if we break that link, all it will happen is the next time the invoice comes in, or if there are any invoices awaiting to be processed, it will just ask you again to map that supplier. And last one we got here is send transaction to supplier, but that's more for the ordering side. If you want to have transactions automatically sent to the supplier. So that is some of the more kind of advanced stage or functions around the invoice processing. Hopefully by utilizing these, it just helps keep things out of the unprocessed tray. It's getting the system to automatically process things for you. And then ideally what should be left in here is where we've got things like a part match or overmatch, where the supplier hasn't invoiced enough or has invoiced too much. Things where invoices don't balance, perhaps because of VAT rounding issues, or it's a invoice from a brand new supplier that we haven't seen yet, so we just need to map that and then set it all, or there's missing coding. So it's not being able to determine what the account code should be because there are no supplier defaults set, or it's got the wrong order number on there and we just need to go and do that manual find. So that was the demonstration. Now, one of the things that I think we skipped through, was obviously about the eco system, and obviously all of the great stuff that you've just been shown from through the demonstration. This is all sponsored by Pegasus. And Pegasus is an award-winning provider of accounting, payroll, and business software. Their aim is to build business tools that enable companies to run their operations every day effortlessly and profitably. And by being part of the ecosystem, they enable businesses to make smarter buying decisions directly within our platform. The ecosystem itself, hopefully you would have noticed on your iCompleat screen, we have the option at the top from the home page where you can select the banner and you can go into the ecosystem. And this is just a small selection of some of the huge range of suppliers and diverse industries that the ecosystem covers. So whether it is office supplies, financial solutions, or specialized services, the ecosystem makes it seamless to find, connect with, and buy from the best suppliers without the usual hassle. And what you see here is, as I said, just that small snapshot of the suppliers that we have available. Apologies, the slides are doing their own thing and skipping all over the place. So that takes us nicely to the questions and answers, and I will just move my screen across to the questions. So, first question I got here is, occasionally invoices come through with the wrong VAT amount. Is there a way I can override the value iCompleat pulls through? So with that, there is, if it's a case that, in fact, let me move back to my, let me just grab it off this screen here. Let's move back to here. If it is a case that we've got our invoice, and if we have a look at the invoice here, let's say, for example, the total VAT here says £440.80, but the VAT up here says £440.81, or it doesn't say anything at all. That, because these totals here are what Capture has extracted, and these totals here should equal these totals here. If there's a difference here, then what would need to happen is that invoice would need to be reprocessed. So that'd be a case of just contacting support, telling them that it has that it's gone wrong, and could it be re-extracted, please, with the correct amounts. And that process goes for any invoice that is coming into the system incorrectly. If it's picking up the wrong supplier of invoice reference, or is picking up the wrong order number, it's not picking up the lines. If there's anything wrong with the invoices and you have to keep correcting them, please do let us know. We want to know. We want to be able to update the templates so that we can then ensure that Capture is capturing the correct information and make sure that you're getting the best experience from that. So just to go back to the question, if it was that this total and this total is incorrect, it would need to be reprocessed. If, however, it was a case of, let's just change that, and it was this total and this total, or rather this total and this total, so the VAT is showing different here, then that could be, as we've just seen, as I managed to do, is because it was coded incorrectly. I'd imagine from your question it's probably not, but that could be one reason. Another reason, though, that could throw these out is perhaps tax rounding. And I don't think I've got an example ready and waiting to go, but what we would ideally see is an option whereby we can tell the system that, there we are. So I've forced it to say that it's 0. It is telling me that I need to review the totals. And if I click on this banner, let's just show again, we detected the difference between the original header totals and the calculated totals. If I go into here, I can see that it's expecting VAT. This is a bit of an extreme example, granted, but this is the area that we'd be looking for. It would show you that we've got the option to auto correct, so we can assign the difference, accept the difference, so it's just going to take the line values and send those across regardless, or we can go and manually correct. If I auto correct, I can tell it where I want the difference to apply. You can see it's put that value in there for me and everything's fine. If I'd accepted the difference, it would have sent a 0 value through for the VAT on this particular line. If I'd manually or chosen to manually edit it, it would move that to the edit screen where I can then go through and manually manipulate the lines to get them to balance. So let's just have a look, see if we've got any other questions at all. So how do I do, or rather undo a match? That is again from the, I keep losing my complete screen, bear with me. That is from the grid view. And if we hover over the icon, so you can see it's matched, hover over the icon, and that's just an undo match on that one there, and that will revert everything back for us. Another question we got is, picks up the wrong currency amount. Guess reaching out to support is the best way to resolve this. Yes, yep, totally right on that one. What might have happened is, what I suspect would have happened actually, is that it would then, whilst it's going through capture, it's not correctly identified the currency. So again, whilst you could probably change the currency in this system, although probably not, because it would think it was a GBP, for example, just let support know. They'll update the template, make sure it doesn't happen again for next time. How can I quickly process invoices in a batch to sign them off, approve them? At the moment, I click the invoice, check, copy, and then approve, but have to do that 50 times in a batch. Yeah, unfortunately, there isn't yet a way to approve everything in a batch. It's an interesting point. It does come up. It's whether customers, the majority of the customers want that functionality, because there is the risk that by going through and just batch approving, not everything is being reviewed properly, perhaps, and there is the chance that something could accidentally sneak through. But it is a good point, and it is something that we do often discuss internally. And likewise, if there are any suggestions, or if there's anything that you would like the system to do that could improve your usability of it, make things easier for you, then please do let us know. We are incredibly keen to obviously learn of anything that's going to improve the system and make your lives better at the end of the day. So thank you for those questions. Obviously, apologies if I haven't got through to or got round to all of them. I think I have, from what I can see in the Q&A box. Just to finish up on contacts. So obviously, if you have any questions or suggestions or things that you would like to see the system do, as I said, then obviously if it's support related, then obviously please reach out to support. But otherwise, there's our customer success team, success@compleatsoftware.com. And obviously, don't forget to connect with us on LinkedIn. There will be a short feedback survey coming out to you as well after this session. Very keen to learn on feedback and also on what sort of topics you would like to see as well in the next upcoming areas. And talking about the next one, obviously, as I mentioned before, it is the workflows that are going to be shown next. That's 21st of August at 12 p.m. So what I'll be doing is going through workflows, how to amend existing workflows, review them, add in things like those, that new project field that we created, etc., etc. And lastly, just before you go, slide about clearly labeled documents. Obviously, the capture system is working from the premise that on the documents it will be clearly stated. So the better quality documents we can have come through, so much the better. And if you are looking to upgrade your finance system, obviously just check with us first, make sure that the connector is supported, and everything will be fine when you do actually go for that upgrade. So that just leaves me to say thank you ever so much for your time. We do appreciate you giving up your lunch break. Hope you found the session of use, and I look forward to welcoming you on to next month's session for workflows. Have a great afternoon, everybody.